Hey, it's Carly.
Hey, it's Shamina, and
And
we're
full.
emotional.
So full. So today we have a guest. I'm super excited to introduce her. Her name's Kamaria. And I'll introduce her and then kind of tap on what we're going to talk about because it's kind of going to be broad today. So living with Black Girl Magic, HIV, and chronic optimism, Kamaria serves nationally as program director for HIV policy reform with the SERO project, offering strategic planning and community mobilization training to state leaders living with HIV to change their HIV criminalization laws. So it sounds like a lot, but we're actually going to talk about that self-growth, change, transitioning, all those kind of fun things. So without further ado,
Before we get started, we want to thank our patrons, Therese Gallagher, Kevin Gallagher, and Joanne Stewart for their continued support through Patreon. So thank you all for that. And
yes,
now,
thank you.
let's
And
get
now,
emotional.
without further ado, I got so excited. I almost skipped it. Okay. And any moment now. Woo! Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you on. I know me and you have met in person, but you've not met Shamina. So this is Shamina.
Hey.
You guys can have a little, but I'm super excited to have this conversation because I even wrote little notes of what me and you were talking about, of things that really I think stuck out. So I kind of let people know a little bit that we're going to talk about that kind of transitional phase, getting to that you go through when you're experiencing this self-growth and that change. So
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm honored that you thought of me for your podcast. So I'm really excited, Shamina, to meet you. I've listened to a couple episodes, so I'm looking forward to our conversation and hopefully having an impact on others, like helping others navigate transition.
Definitely.
yeah.
Super excited to have you on. Carly told me a lot about you, and I was like, all right, let's meet her because I've been hearing so much about her. And if you hear my dog barking, I apologize. I can't shut them up. So
It's like
So when me and you were kind of going back and forth and I was asking you hey, what do you want to talk about? And you brought up a couple things that I think, if I would love for you to go in depth about, the transitional phase. I know me you talked about, but you said relearning who I am and how these identities are changing. And I think that if you can elaborate on that a little bit, I think that would be amazing because I think so many people are probably experiencing that, but probably don't know that feeling, everyone feels it differently, but they don't know how to express it in those words of we're constantly evolving. But how does that feel for you?
Yeah, so I don't even know if I know how to articulate it. But I can share what I've experienced. So I mean, as a little girl, I always daydreamed of getting married, having the career, having the child or children, and living a long, happy life, knowing life challenges will come. Didn't work out for me like that. So I did things kind of backwards or, not in the right order. Right order. I had my daughter first. And in me having my daughter, kind of figured out my purpose in life. Because while she was not impacted physically, it was after her birth, I found out that I was HIV positive. And then later found out she was negative. So trying to decide what to do with life, since clearly it doesn't look how I planned. And then, being really focused on advocacy and trying to learn who I am in that phase. So that was 18 years ago. And then in the middle of that, I met my husband, and getting married. So now I've had this independence as a single mom. Now I'm a wife and this advocate, and I've built a career out of advocacy. And then 2019, my husband passed away. And so I feel like I have experienced a full lifetime before reaching the age of 40. I'll be 40 next summer. And it's all these little spaces of life where I got my teeth were sunk into like, hey, now I'm the wife, now I'm the mom, now I'm this. And then the rug gets pulled from under my feet. And I'm like, wait, now who am I? And it's really taught me how to maybe not get attached to my identities, but to be just attached to life's moments and how I respond to them. Because I think looking back, even from being kind of identified as the good girl, and then I got pregnant in college, not attaching myself to the identity of being a disappointment. Like I refused to let myself feel that way. And then I refused to let myself feel like a statistic because I'm a single mom, a Black woman living at home with her mother, working part-time. And these were statistics that I'd always heard throughout, I guess, my sex ed classes of this is who you don't want to be. Like I was always given these cautionary tales. And then I became one and I was like, whoa, okay, so what pieces of this do I want to embrace? What pieces of this do I need to redefine? And then what pieces of this really don't matter? And it was as I kept living, I was like, oh, a whole lot of this doesn't matter, a whole lot. What other people think, first and foremost, don't really matter because I'm the one that has to look at myself every day. I'm the one that has to get up and operate in this body and this mind with these feelings. It's me. I matter. And I've had to keep reminding myself that. So that's like a synopsis of where I am in the transition. Well, what brought me to the transition. Where I am in the transition is confused. Confused. Honestly, like I said, it's 18 years I've been living with HIV. My daughter graduated high school. My husband passed away. We're in the middle of a panini. Hopefully not too much longer, but it's feeling really tense and scary out there. Quarantine feels like something that's going to happen again. And navigating all of that while being a human being is very interesting. And it's something that I know I don't own the monopoly on. We're all in this together. But when I have to individualize and look at myself, it's confusing and it's scary and at the same time exciting. Like knowing that I cannot go back and be the same person I was kind of feels good because there were some parts of me I wasn't really too happy with. I was like, I don't know how to break out of this rut. Granted, this is not how I wanted to come out of it, but here I am. And how am I going to respond to that? And how am I going to navigate life now? So, yeah, that was a really long answer to your question.
I really, hang on, Carly, hang on. Doing the question. Let me go first. I really gravitated and appreciated what you had said of, this kind of made me question like my identity. Do I want to continue putting myself kind of in this box or recognizing I want to kind of live in the moment because our identities shift throughout our whole lifetime, even as we're kids, then we're adults and then we're partners and then we're whatever else we are. And I really liked that that perspective of it because I think that really resonates with me of that we don't ever fit into like one box because throughout our whole lifespan developmentally, like we're always changing, we're always evolving, and our identities do with us. And so, and as life comes and hits us and is like, oh, you think everything's fine and this is how you are, like, so try this. I've had one of those experiences just today alone, so I kind of understand that, and I really like that perspective because it shows that we like to stay constant. We don't like things to change. We're very much creatures of habit, and recognizing that we have no control at times of things that happen to us, but only how we choose to respond to them.
Yeah, I I 100% agree with all that. And another thing that really I like that you said of like that, the transitional phase, it's like you said confusing, it's scary, and sometimes it can be quote unquote boring. And I think a lot of people try to rush through that phase
Mhm.
and get to that next step of like, okay, so I just ended it with this person. So when's the next person going to come along? But they don't realize that this transitional phase is a whole phase, it's that we should be experiencing and appreciating. And like, you know what, maybe if your day is kind of mundane and you just, for a week, you maybe do that to appreciate that kind of and don't rush through it, because like you said, like that's you kind of exploring yourself and learning these new identities like you had brought up of like we're always changing and evolving, but sometimes I don't think we give ourselves the time to acknowledge that, and then all of a sudden we're like, whoa, I'm a mom, or you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's just like that came out of nowhere because we were so quick to get to that step.
I think even quick to get to that step, or sometimes so comfortable in where we are that we forget to look up and realize like life is still continuing. And I live on the fine line in between. And I think because the boredom, when you said that, it didn't resonate with me until you talked about the rushing. And I was like, no, that does make sense. I don't typically get bored, but I will get comfortable
Mm-hmm.
and keep doing the same things. And then when the thing comes that needs to make me transition, I'm not ready because I wasn't looking up, I wasn't rushing. Um, to make my point more clear, like when quarantine happened for me, I was already isolating because my husband passed in December. Quarantine officially kind of, I live in Florida, so I'm sorry, America. Like I'm sorry.
Enough.
Um, I really, really am. But quarantine didn't really start for us until like April.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't bothered by it. I was like, I'm already a hermit crab. I'm already in the house. My daughter had taken time off from school herself for bereavement, but then immediately she went back. So that was literally the only thing getting me out the house, was I had to take her to school every day because she finished out the winter break on campus. So going through like quarantine didn't give me the opportunity to get bored and want to rush through it
Mm-hmm.
until the vaccines became available, just being honest. So I was like, okay, now things are looking like I feel more safe, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I started making plans. I started experiencing and doing things that the quote unquote old Kamaria wouldn't have done. And I think that's the exciting part. And maybe that's a taste of like what I did. Maybe I did get bored during quarantine and I was thinking of like, what else can I do? Cause like it was dye your hair, get tattoos, like have a nervous breakdown. I mean, I'm not joking about that. It's just like people think when you start doing these things that something is wrong with you. And I was really just exploring my freedom of coming outside of expectations of others.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you're a mom and you're about to be 40, so you should look and behave this way. Or, when my husband was living, you're a wife and you're active in your church and you should behave this way. And I'm like, no, I'm a human being and I'm Kamaria and this is what I like to do. And if it makes you uncomfortable, we can talk about it, but
It's my life, not yours.
That's about
my
it.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
And I'm embracing that this is not dress rehearsal. Like this is the only,
Mm-hmm.
outside of like for those that believe in like the reincarnation phase. I don't know like how I feel about that, but I acknowledge that it's a reality for a lot of folks, but this is the only current life we get. And I want to make the best of it. I don't want to leave here with any regrets. And I don't want to leave anyone behind feeling sorry for me that I didn't get to do certain things or live a certain way. So
Mm-hmm. And I like what you said, and I feel like it really hit home with me of like almost like this for me, my transitional phase I'm realizing is like you said it perfectly of like this freedom of no longer living like to these expectations of others, and like I don't think I thought of it like that until you said it, But then it just like, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing all of these things because I no longer have to care. Like, what will my partner think? I don't care because you know what? I don't have one. So it's like, it's almost like a new learning of like, I can do this. I don't care what someone will think. And I don't have to be like, hey, is it like I chopped my hair off? Granted, I realized I don't like short hair, but it gave me the opportunity to realize that on my own because I felt like always before, like you had to have like, you know, I was always told like, oh, I like long hair. I prefer, and so I always typically had longer hair. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna cut my hair off. And now I know, okay, prefer long hair, but I made that decision. So yeah, like that freedom of not having anyone's expectations on you is just like, whoa, like, yes, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really powerful what you just said. Like, you made me think about how we have a habit of making other people's comforts our own comforts, and we don't realize whether they're true or not until we make change. And that change I don't ever see anything wrong. Change is a choice. Like, I don't see anything wrong with, sorry, with making, with making changes. And I think society tells us that we should be afraid of them, and we should question or doubt why we're making the changes. And I do agree that you should always do like an assessment of why you're making a decision, to make sure it is coming from like a place that can lead to healing. But I think just pausing and even having that inner conversation of, am I wearing this certain outfit or dressing this certain way or doing my hair a certain way for someone else, or am I doing it for me? And if I'm doing it for me, how does it make me feel? Am I doing this when I'm sad, or am I doing this to be more professional? Am I doing this to gain something? Like, I think having those well, I'm doing that. I'm constantly, doing internal assessments of, why did you make this choice, Kamaria?
Mhm.
Sometimes I never have an answer. It's just like, it just felt good and I keep it moving.
Definitely. And I think transitional periods in our lifetime tend to be, from a more of like clinical perspective, tend to be the most stress inducing and difficult for us, because again, like, we like constant, we don't like change. And I notice kind of with my clients is a lot of them, and us, because I put myself in this category as well, we try to get back to a previous level of functioning for ourselves. Like, okay, well, how do I get back to that person? Because I really liked that person and I liked those qualities. And so I want to do that. Particularly, I think after like a breakup or a loss or any of those problems, Carly, it's like, how do I get back to that person? That person was fun and I did all these things. And, I tell my clients all the time, that person doesn't exist anymore, because you can't go back and you can't recreate that version of you. You get to decide now, like, hey, I really liked those qualities and those traits. And so I want to continue that moving forward. And this is the way that I want to shape my identity and myself now, as opposed to I'm trying to get back to this old version of me, because we'll fail every single time, because we can't go back into the past. We can only move forward.
Listening to you, though, I'm thinking like, isn't that beautiful though, that we don't stay the same, that when all these different things happen to us, that they do evolve us, like that we're not the same exact person. I think, oh my gosh, if I was 20-year-old me dealing with everything I'm dealing with now, I don't think I'd be here, to be perfectly honest. I don't think I'd be able to handle it if I never evolved in the past 18 years. So yeah, there's beauty. It's a bittersweet part of our human experience, that we kind of have to change, but in that change, like you said, we get to choose which pieces as we move forward and evolve. And I think right now I am tapping into like the younger version of me, like between 20, 26, that was like a brand new single mom, where I didn't get to experience certain things because I was hyper focused on my child, and maybe still to her mind, maybe I still am. But I do notice like there's things that pique my interest. There's things I would have never done in my 20s had I been invited, that now it's like, what was the big deal? What was my problem? yeah, so I think there's a beautiful thing about being able to experience life and change with it.
I think as scary as change is, it's 100% necessary because, like you said, if we never evolved, we wouldn't be able to make it through some of the things that we make it through, and we don't think that we will because we evolve and we're able to adapt ourselves. And I think, like, one other thing you said of, sometimes when we make decisions, well, you were saying when you make decisions, you kind of self-assess and say, why am I doing this? Maybe it's because I'm sad or maybe not. And I think that that's really good that you do that. And I think it's awesome that you acknowledge it, and it's cool. Like, you know what? I'm going to dress this way today because I'm sad. But you know what? Like, good. Like, it's good that you're aware. Like, I think me and Shamina have discussed on it, but several times before, of like, people always think you have to be happy all the time. And like, yeah, ideally that's the goal, but that's not life. So I think if we are more accepting of the million other emotions that we experience, I think we could get so much further. So if you know what, like, hey, I'm wearing this because I'm freaking sad today, but I'm aware of it and I'm accepting that. And you know what, maybe tomorrow I'm going to wear something else because I'm going to be happy. That's awesome. But I think the step to getting to that happier mood is accepting, because if you just keep trying to push it away, I think you're going to continue to experience it because you're not allowing yourself to feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
I have a complicated relationship with the word acceptance, and I finally come to terms with the definition that I can get behind because Carly and I talk a lot about language and the importance of language, and acceptance is one of those terms in our culture that means it kind of has this undertone of like, we have to be okay with it, or it's almost a way of like making an excuse for something, like, oh, I'll accept what's happened, or I'll forgive you, and that means, you get like a free pass sort of thing. And so I don't, as a therapist, I don't like that term working with my clients because it's very dismissive. And even personally, I'm like, I can't get behind that because no. But I found, and I think I've talked about this before in like our grief and loss episode, but I found that most people can connect with this type of definition of acceptance, and that you can accept the reality of the situation that has happened, but on an emotional level, you don't have to be okay with it. So if you lost your husband, you can accept the fact that he's gone, and that is a significant loss, but you're not emotionally okay with that. And that is not a place where we expect people to, it's like, oh, keep pushing, or he's in a better place, or kind of those invalidating statements that we get told when we lose somebody. It's like, that's all cool and fine, but like, this is significant for me, and this is valid. And so I have found that definition tends to resonate more with people because we can accept the reality of our situation and different types of events. We may try to deny them for a while, but we can kind of come to terms, full circle here. But on an emotional level, you don't have to be okay with it. You don't have to, kind of forgive and forget, or whatever those cliche terms are that we tend to kind of tell people when we go and experience through things, because your emotions are valid. And so you get to feel how you feel, but we recognize that, like, yes, this is happening, and this, I can't deny this is right in front of my face. And I think that's anytime anybody uses the word acceptance, I have to say that, because I have a complicated relationship, and this is my definition. So if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, let it go.
No, I think that's very true. And when Carly was talking, this is just so eerie for me, but I'm always like tapped into people on a different level. But while Carly was talking, I wrote down two things can be true at the same time. And when you said your definition of acceptance, I was like, yes, that is a way of defining acceptance. Like, I can be heartbroken and gut-wrenchingly sad over not having my husband here, but then also extremely excited that I get to, like, I don't know, have the whole bed to myself. That's a weird analogy, but that was one thing. I remember waking up one morning and I had taken over the whole bed, and I was like, whoa. And then I went back to sleep. I was like, I'm not going to make a big deal of this. I was tired. But then dreamed about him, the whole time. So it's strange when you do an assessment, for me, of like which times two opposite ends of the spectrum things are true, but then having to acknowledge them to continue to move on. Because denying them, I learned in the very beginning, like denying that two things or three or four things are true at the same time, wreaked havoc on my mental health. Like, it was creating anxiety for me. It was where I couldn't form a full sentence because I would start stuttering. I couldn't keep food down. I couldn't make simple decisions. I'm normally an indecisive person by nature, but like I would walk into the kitchen to get a glass of water, but not know which cup to drink from. Like there was suddenly this emotional attachment to every cup. And I was like, just, you're thirsty, just get a cup. So denial, I had to remember. I remember going through denial when I was diagnosed with HIV, and that led to secrecy and how hazardous that was on my health. I was literally in the hospital every 3 months with some sort of some type of infection. And then remembering that going through grief, I'm like, your body does not respond well to you acknowledging your reality. And you need to so what I had to start doing was making lists every day for every simple shower, eat, feed the dog, close the refrigerator door, open the blinds. Like I had to do those things. And then at the end of the day, if I didn't have something checked off, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I was just able to acknowledge the things that didn't make sense for me to do that day, but I did them the next day or a couple of days later.
I think it just like hit right on the ball, because I think I am the same way as you, and like I tried to deny how I was feeling, but I think you can only deny for yourself for so long before your body is going to let you know. And it's going to let you know, like you said, you couldn't pick out a cup. Like, yeah, you might have been indecisive, but like you would know, you could easily pick out a cup. But I think the same thing happened with me. It got to a point where I was like, I was just like on the verge of like, I'm going to explode, because I was trying to deny myself of like, no, everything's fine. Everything will work out. It'll be okay. And my body was like, you can only lie to yourself for so long, because I'm not going to let you go too long. And it did. It got to a point where I was like, I cannot live like this anymore, because I'm denying myself like comfort almost, or like, like self-love, I guess, in a sense of like, I'm depriving myself of love to myself, because I'm trying to, like you said earlier, almost please someone else and make sure they're comfortable, when I'm over here like so uncomfortable that it's causing pain.
That's for some people, because I've talked to my friends about this, and it's just, I think we're not taught how to be vulnerable in a healthy way. We're
taught not to be vulnerable, because then someone can attack you.
Absolutely. And we're not taught how to be. We're taught to, suck it up, get over it, move on, hustle, grind, whatever, that whole toxic ideology around existing. And it's just so, I'm trying to learn how to model vulnerability and separate it from this idea of you're weak if you're vulnerable, and how to redefine that as having power in your vulnerability. Because once I speak my truth, once it's out there, I mean, there's really nothing anyone can do with it except either accept it or move on with your life. Like you can't use it against me, is what I'm trying to say. I'm a firm believer in owning my truth and subscribing to like what's authentic for me, so that others can't use it against me as a weapon. And it might be a defense mechanism against the stigma of HIV. That's where I learned it from. But it's helped me a lot. And just being able to speak, today, Monday, I'm mad at the world and here's why. And if I'm going to take action steps towards that, fine. And if I'm going to just stay mad about it, fine. But here's where I am today. So 5 years from now, when you ask me, like, how did I deal with everything that's happening in healthcare, you know where Kamaria stood, and you won't be able to use it against me. There will be no confusion.
Definitely.
And, sorry,
go and then
okay. I just want to say, obviously me and you had met prior with my previous employment, but I really wanted to have you on as a guest because of pretty much what you had just said right then and there. Like, me and you don't stay in touch like that, but like I watch your Instagram stories and I was just like, she is where I'm at right now. Like you are consciously, like, if you want to call it healing, but you're being self-aware, and that is what I currently am choosing to do. And like you said, it's a choice, and like some people, they might choose that, just go, get better, let it go. But like consciously choosing to heal and be self-aware and process these feelings is hard, but I think it's worth it. And so like, I would always watch your stories and I'm like, I gotta have her on because I feel like we're like feeling the same thing. You're like, so that's really like, like I said, it's not like me and you talked every day, but I was just like, I need to reach out to her because I really feel like it's important that we get this across, that like choosing to feel your feelings is vulnerable, but it's a strength, because you know what? I'm deciding to choose my feelings so that I'm going to be self-aware. You can't use it against me, because what, you're going to say, oh, you're sad? Yeah, I am. I said that. So come at me, like, but if we deny it and someone calls us out, it leaves us like speechless, and we don't know how to go with that because we're like, oh shoot, they know I'm sad. They can't know I'm sad.
That, and I think when the people call us out about things that we haven't acknowledged, for me, it leaves me feeling not, I don't want to say vulnerable, it leaves me feeling unsafe. Like, oh crap, either I'm not handling this as well as I thought I was, either I've gone into a really deep place of denial that I wasn't aware of. It almost makes me angry because it has happened where people have called me out, and it's been done in love. But at the same time, I'm like, I wasn't ready to deal with that. Excuse you. Let me tuck that back in. You weren't supposed to see that. So, but by not, and this is like, I think, a thing from my childhood of people pleasing, by not wanting people to call me out. I think that's why I might be maybe a little obsessive with self-assessments, with like questioning why I do something all the time. I have the journals to prove it. I have multiple journals simultaneously of me questioning why. But I'm working through it. And I think as long as I'm constantly, like you said, being self-aware and not hiding it, like I'm not a person who's scared if someone finds my journals. Like, good, I hope something in there makes sense to you, because I'm speechless, well, thoughtless about how I navigate some of the stuff I do, some of the decisions I make. I just show up and let myself feel whatever it is. So
Definitely. And
yeah,
the power of vulnerability, I mean, as a therapist, like that's all I ever talk to clients about. It's like, this is a strength. It's not everything you've been taught. This is not a weakness. But it reminds me of this particular quote from Brene Brown. She's a researcher in the field. I absolutely love her. And I want to actually read the quote because I think it very much ties into everything that we're talking about right now. So this was a quote from FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Oh,
I was I was like, what does that stand for? Oh shit. I got it. No worries, I'm good. But I really want to read this quote because this was kind of, Brene Brown did a TED Talk in 2015 and it's called The Power of Vulnerability. If you've never seen it, watch it. I recommend it to all of my clients because I think it's fantastic. She's amazing. I love her. Brene Brown, if you ever listen to this, please. But this is essentially the quote. So it's called The Man in the Arena it's by Theodore Roosevelt, not Freddie. My bad.
oh, there were two of them. Yes.
Yes. So Theodore Roosevelt is the right one. So this is a quote. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And I really like this quote because it makes sense of, if you step into the arena and choose to be vulnerable, you have all of the critics kind of watching you, these spectators being able to put their opinion or their 2 cents or judge or what have you. But if they're not willing to step in the arena with you, it doesn't matter at that point, because they're not taking that chance that you are. They're not taking the risk. They're not opening themselves up for the hurt and rejection that comes hand in hand with choosing to be vulnerable. And I really, just as you were kind of talking about that, Kamaria, I was like, oh, Brene Brown and that quote, like that makes that. And I really resonated towards that when I first had heard her TED Talk, because there is so much power in being vulnerable. There's so much human connection that we get when we choose to be vulnerable with other people instead of being inauthentic and not congruent to who we are, or allowing ourselves to show up that way. I was actually just talking with a client today who, they constantly feel like, I have to put this mask on. I have to put this mask on. I have to be what other people need me to be, or I have to be what I'm supposed to be because society says that this is how I'm supposed to act. And I said, I'm sure that's exhausting. And let's figure out a way we can take that mask down and you can be more congruent and more authentic in all areas of your life instead of just in the comfort of your home, because so many of us feel that we can finally take the mask off when we're home. And when we leave, even to go to the grocery store or what have you, we put it back on because we need to fit in, we need to be accepted, we need to be liked, what have you. And so I think there's great power in vulnerability for sure.
So much came up for me and listening to that quote and just reflecting. And one of the things is the critics are going to be there regardless. Mm-hmm. Whether you choose the vulnerability and choose to do that work on yourself and being like in the journey to becoming whole, whether you choose that or not, the critics are going to be there. They're either going to be there to affirm the fears that you're holding on to, or they're going to be there to kind of maybe push you outside. It depends on how you respond to the criticism while in the arena, if you even hear it. I know there's times in my life as I was listening, and I'm a visual person, so I was literally picturing like a gladiator arena. And I was just thinking about different battles I've been through in my life where there's times where I literally would block out. I think I'm even doing that now, like social media, there's spaces of it I block out because I know the audience. There are some audiences I feel have a perspective of me that's not accurate. Or it's a creation of a version of myself that they've created in their mind. And I can't allow criticism to come from a snapshot of what you have in your mind of who I am. Mm-hmm. My circle of folks who can like actually call me out and be like, girl, what are you doing? Those are the folks that actually aren't even on social media. Those are the ones who will just feel me and they'll call. My friends know that I speak louder in my silence than when I'm being vocal. And they know how to identify that silence and know if I'm just reflecting or if I'm actually like struggling to like fight my way through whatever the current battle is. And then another thing that came up for me was just thinking about that. There's like this icebreaker that people love to do where you have to like name an animal that you identify with and like your spirit animal. And I remember there was a time where I said, someone else in the group said chameleon, and I didn't want to say the same thing, even though that's what I was going to say. So I said a unicorn, trying to be funny because I love unicorns. And I literally couldn't think of another animal. And the facilitator, oh boy, the facilitator was like, why do you feel like you have to be magical for everybody else? Why can't you be magical for yourself? And I wanted to scream and pull my hair out and run out the room. But I was like, I don't know. And I remember just sitting down, like I didn't even do the activity. I just sat there. I was like, I hate this icebreaker. I just wanted to be a bear. No. Yeah, I found that question really eye-opening for me. It's like the animals we pick, like what are the vulnerabilities in that animal of why we identify with them, even though we're naming strengths and great qualities. Because even with the chameleon, I feel like I always have to change who I am to fit in whatever room I'm in. And so it just made me think like, why did I feel, I don't feel this way anymore, but why did I used to feel like I had to shift and mask myself for others? And I feel more free from that now, especially since a little bit, there's still some like, I don't know, in-law stuff and grieving stuff that I'm still navigating. And I don't know when that'll end for me, but I'm looking forward to being able to like take ownership of that narrative and like break free from the things I'm still a little bit scared of and understanding what being a widow is. I don't even like using that word actually. I wish there was another word. If either of you know another phrase, I would gladly take it because I really don't like identifying as a widow. It's weird.
I
Yeah.
don't, but
I don't have,
Shameen,
my only other thing would be like spouse whose partner has passed away. So it's more of like positive language as opposed to like widow. And that would only be my best
Yeah.
thing, or just like, yeah, my partner's passed on or what have you. And I think also even within that, you get to choose the language that you use and how you identify with that and how you kind of introduce that to the people in your life and what have you. And they may ask like, oh, what does that mean? Or I haven't heard that term before. And you get to be able to explain that this feels congruent for you. And that's why you've chosen that language as opposed to like this is what society says you have to be now. And,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
I think there's also kind of a lot of empowerment even in that.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna work on it through therapy. I'm sure I'll come up with something.
Let us know.
Yeah, I will. I definitely will. Because I think that titles like that, they always evoke a knee-jerk reaction from people when they hear widow. You always get the head tilt. Oh, I think the same comes with divorce or breakup, or not that they're not genuine reactions, but it almost puts the like you don't have an opportunity to hold space in a genuine way for me because you automatically feel like you have to defend or explain or avoid because you don't want to make the other person uncomfortable, even though they expressed what's supposed to be some sort of empathy. Sorry, I'm in a mood today.
No,
but
because there's a lot of pity underneath that, or you know,
Yes.
I use a lot of self-disclosure with my clients. I talk a lot about like the loss of my grandmother and or the domestic violence that I've experienced, and I've found this language that I feel connected with, and it's very empowering. And so, you know, if I say like, oh yeah, I'm a child of domestic abuse, then that feels congruent to me as opposed to like, yeah, my parents went through this thing and I have this trauma and blah, blah, blah. And it allows me the chance to elaborate and somebody else to kind of better understand my world because of the language that I'm using instead of there's this undertone of like pity, you know, like, oh, there's this loss or breakup or death or what have you. And there's just like pity or, oh, this is a hot topic. And like, I don't want her to get into that because then I'm going to have to deal with that. And like, I'm uncomfortable with that. So skirt, no, thank you.
Were you gonna say something, girly?
I was just gonna say, like, in regards to divorce and breakup, whenever people are like, oh, it's like, how do you know how do you know I'm sad? What if like this actually was a really good thing for me to get out of and it's a benefit, you know? So I definitely, like Shamina said, like there's always like that pity underlying, and it's like, don't don't automatically try to put like your feelings onto me in a sense,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
like you don't even know what I went through, and you're gonna be like, oh, you went through a breakup or a divorce, and it's like, actually that was probably the best thing I could have done. So that was just like, you know, my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think like I remember feeling there were times where I felt guilty for being happy. Like if I wouldn't post a selfie of me smiling, even though I was having a really good day. Or if I had to do a work Zoom, I would leave my camera off. And I'm a normally very expressive person. If I feel comfortable and trust you, if I don't want you to know what I'm thinking, you won't. You'll just get a smile or you'll get a blank stare. And the odds forever be in your favor of what either of those mean. um, but I think that I spent a lot of time, hiding. And now I've been around more people, like everybody's on Zoom. So I've found myself purposely leaving my camera on. And even if I'm not having the best of days, I showed up, here I am. So you got 1 hour of my time. Let's get through this agenda. Let's do what we have to do. But yeah, it's I don't know, a lot is bubbling up for me all of a sudden. That's really interesting that I get to journal about later. Um, yeah.
I love that you journal, by the way. Can I just say that? Because that is something that I've started to do. And it's just so amazing. It's just like,
Yeah. It is. It's I can't write fast enough for the way the thoughts race through my head. Like there's
yep.
so much. So I have a video journal, not a vlog. They will
Ooh.
never see the light of day. The video ones won't. I have a notes thing on my phone. There's an app called I think it's called One a Day or One Day. It literally is like a snapshot of your day. Like it, if you have selfies in your phone, it pulls the date you took that picture, and then you can write like what
Oh,
that image meant for you. And at the end of the year, it puts together this, if you do it every day, it puts together a 365-second
I love
montage.
that.
Yeah. And of course there's, upgrades that you pay for extra stuff. But
I
it's
love
interesting
that.
to watch. Depending on what you upload, it gives you a nice picture of what your year was.
Hmm.
And then I also have like just your old-fashioned journals. I also have like a what do you call it? A lunar journal, like new moon, full moon, quarter moon, all that stuff. Like, what am I thinking and how am I feeling? Because the moon is like my favorite thing ever. If you really watch my stories, you'll know when I'm in a mood because I just post pictures of the moon.
I really like
um,
the video journaling. I
it
really
is
like
really
that.
cool. It is really cool. I do that one to hold me accountable for like hearing myself say things. It's one thing to write something down and kind of an abstract. I'm feeling like this today, and here are the details that happened. But when I talk to the video, I'm following like a prompt of questions, making myself like name a feeling and having to look at myself say these things. I guess it's a step up from talking in the mirror, I guess, because you can't record that. But it's been helpful in the past, especially if I'm going through something. And I think this is like the beauty of journaling is you get to look back. And there's times I've looked back and I'm like, damn, what the hell was I going through? Because I may not name the thing, but I'm naming my feelings. And I'm really like, I'll sit there, I'm like, wow, like it might just be a poem that I wrote. And I'm like, what the hell was I going through when I wrote this? Thank God I'm not there anymore. Like I'm so happy I've moved past this because that's some dark stuff. Um, but I've journaled since I was 12 and I've kept every single
Wow.
one of my journals, and it's a hoot to read. um, and it's also interesting to see which parts of me have stayed the same in all this life. Like just the fact that I love to think, I love to laugh, I love sad songs. For some reason, they make me happy, even though I'm crying in the midst of listening to them. Those things about me haven't changed, but then there's so much that has. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the future days are going to bring for who I'm evolving into. I said this before to a friend that I don't know who future Kamaria is, but I'm a little scared of her because I feel like she's going to be one strong bad bitch. Pardon my French, but it's just, I know the strength I've carried from past versions of me. And thinking of like a stronger, better version of me in the future is a little intimidating, but I'm looking forward to meeting her. Like, yeah, she's pretty cool. I hope.
definitely. And I really like the video kind of blog because for a lot of people, um, writing doesn't feel congruent or they don't that's not naturally how they kind of process things. Like Carly's very verbal. And so she can talk about things, but she can also write them. But I have clients who I'm like, why don't we try journaling? And they're like, Shamina, I just can't write out my feelings. I can speak them better. And so I've encouraged some of them like, well, why don't we try, how can we incorporate that? And sometimes that's, we're better verbally as opposed to like tactile and having to write things out. And even kind of touching on like this future version of you, I've kind of learned more so recently, but this just kind of like resonated with me is that I think the future versions of us are always there, but we have to go through these experiences to reveal them. So it's almost kind of like, those old, like, I don't remember what they're called, like the Russian dolls, like one's another and another and another, and then you got the little tiny one all the way in the middle. It's kind of like that. And like as we experience these things in life, we shed another layer and we're getting closer and closer to like our authentic self because we've always been there, we're just now learning how to embrace them and how to allow them to show up instead of this facade that we've constructed.
I really like that shift in perspective for me, like that the future me is already here. I just have to get to her. Yeah. Huh. I like that a
I
lot.
just thought of that too, and that was like gold. I was like, therapy
That was.
gold. Like,
Lucky
I write
thing
that
for recording.
down. Yes.
And the visual of, I don't remember what the dolls are called either. I used to be a little afraid of them. Just watching people like undo them. So watching someone come undone, you know, if you want to use analogies, is it's a little scary.
Yeah.
But, when you apply it to like ourselves of like digging to the center of who we are and becoming our full, whole, beautiful, authentic selves, I look at those dolls completely differently now. So I really love that.
One other thing that I wanted to touch on that you had messaged me, and it kind of hits home because I don't know if let me say it first. So you had wrote in there that you something about coaching people to use their voice, but you're scared of not doing it right. And to me, I feel like that was so like something to touch on, because I think I've heard from so many people lately, like no one knows what they're doing. We're just kind of like taking it day by day. And like when we make it to the end of the day, we're like, yeah, I did it, you know? And so I think like it's really awesome one that you want, because I think coaching people to use their voice, I feel like partially it's kind of why me and Shamina started, you know, like we want people to be comfortable and okay to say if they're feeling anything other than happy, you know? And so part of that is to use your voice and to not just let someone tell you how you're feeling, or to allow people to just assume in a sense of like, you know, oh, you're going through this, so you must be feeling this. But I do think that your insecurity of not doing it right is so many people's. But I think, you know, personally for me and, you know, the conversations that we've had, I think you'd be amazing. Just putting that out there.
So thank you. It's interesting to have this conversation after we talked about transition and owning our full authentic selves and not living up to expectations. So acknowledging those things, and then also acknowledging like the truth of the compliment you just gave me of like thinking I'm amazing, and me knowing that I have the expertise and the background and the skill set to be able to coach folks, and walking the not so thin line, it's pretty wide bridge of insecurities. And the insecurities come from one, not wanting to like, for lack of a better word, I wouldn't call people clients, but for folks to like resonate with what I'm saying, to not let my clients down or to not let the community down. That's a better word, community. And to not get stuck in a niche that I can't get out of. As I'm evolving, I don't necessarily like branding. Like people have asked me several times, like, why isn't my social media co-branded across like all platforms having the same name? I was like, because I don't wanna. And I use different platforms for different reasons. So I don't wanna. So like those different things that supposedly will drive followers to your social media and get you more clients, it's those mechanics that I get caught up in that create insecurities. But the like knowing I'm capable and able to do it, it's probably why I've been doing it for free on the side. Nobody really knows about. Like I have community members that I feel like I've coached and mentored and helped them. I don't have a quote unquote portfolio of people. So it's just interesting because there's a part of me that wants to level up in that. Not to like become this, I don't know, social media, the image people have now of like coaches and life coaching or whatever you want to call that. It's not that I want to do that. I just really want people to not feel hindered by things that they've experienced in life, and to not feel like they can't have a voice because XYZ happened or they experienced XYZ. I guess I'm at a point in life where I hear a lot of voices around fear and stigma. Specifically, it's around the HIV stigma. I don't know why I'm tap dancing around what I'm trying to say. It's getting people to not live behind the shadows of that anymore. Of living with HIV for 20 plus years, and no one in their family knows, or they may know, but nobody in the family acknowledges it because you feel like you don't have a voice to articulate it, because you're looking at the advocates that are marching to DC, or the advocates that are talking to governors about changing policies. Like there's this comparison, and there's these levels of not feeling like you belong at any of those spaces. It's those individuals I want to help. Like you don't have to get on a podium and with a bullhorn and announce to the world that you're living with HIV, but you can own your status, and you can live beyond your diagnosis just within yourself, so that other people can't use it against you to hold you back from who you are. So thank you for bringing that up, the coaching thing. It's something I'm still like, I guess in a way I am trying to brand it. It feels icky to me to say that. It just does, because I don't want to monetize it. I just want to be able to help people. But then also acknowledging that we live in the society we live in, and I do need a paycheck. So it's balancing those things. And maybe I shouldn't call them insecurities, but more so like they're the mechanics of getting to where I want to be, where I can feel completely free, and how I help people and what that looks like. And then also creating space for them to know that I'm a safe place for them to be coached by, because I'm not a coach for everyone. Yeah, I would like to coach from my own lived experience. I wouldn't want to try to coach somebody on how to become, a welder. I know nothing about welding, so I can just encourage you to go try, and that's about it. But thank you for letting me reflect on that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I really understand kind of the your viewpoint of like not wanting to like monetize it or like brand it in a certain way. And I also kind of challenge that in a sense of kind of, again, like going back to like the acceptance piece and what we were talking about of being able to kind of like accept like this is what you do, and so how can you find a way to like get behind it, or again, like with the congruence, all of these themes today, I love it, like finding this congruent way to kind of present yourself to the community, and whether kind of recognizing, I related a lot to like what I do as a therapist, because people pay me for therapy, like that's what they do, but it's very, my clients tell me all the time, like they'll thank me, and they're like, I know that this is your job and what you're supposed to do, but you can tell that the way that I show up in session with them means so much more than this is my job and this is the way that I get paid. And so I'm a very big proponent personally and also clinically about like my intentions. And so what is my intention behind like the work that I'm doing? And yeah, I get paid for it. Is that the first thing on my mind? No, that's probably the last thing. When my paycheck comes in like 2 weeks, that's when I'm thinking about getting paid. But my intention behind showing up as a therapist, having these types of conversation with my clients, being able to see their progress, see their progression and growth, that's why I do what I do. It just so happens that I'm get to love what I do, and now I get paid for it. So like, that's awesome. That's really cool. But kind of finding that like intention for you, and what is it that you can stand behind that feels congruent and doesn't feel kind of like what you said of like icky, or it just doesn't, it's more of like profit as opposed to like passion sort of thing.
Good Lord. Now you just reminded me of like,
think about.
No, you're just reminding, you're making me remember the things I forgot. And like my pathway of advocacy, and remembering my why and what started. And I've started over for like the 10th time of writing my book. And like, it opens up with the advice I was given when I first started. I was working at a job that I did not, I cared about it, but I didn't, because every time I clocked in, all I was thinking about was the next time I had a speaking engagement and how could I talk about HIV more. And I would call this friend almost every night and talk about where else I wanted to be. And he said to me, he was like, you have got to get to a place where you're comfortable, where you can choose your passion over your paycheck. Mm-hmm. And he was speaking more so like to my faith, and just like where I was with blind faith. And it was like the spiritual awakening for me then that has stuck with me since then, and meant different things throughout time. But I'm remembering the very beginning, and I'm like, wow, because I'm thinking about all the things I've gone through where I was able to do some amazing things with negative zero money in my account, and got to have all these different I'm sorry, my dog is crying. All these different experiences because I was focused on my passion and my purpose, not profit, not a paycheck. I was just focused on the bigger picture. And I wanna kind of stay there and help others to be able to like use that lens if it's useful for them. It may not be useful for everyone. So thank you for helping me remember that. And I need to finish that chapter. A lot of writing.
I would just like to say that I received free therapy from Shamina. Benefit. Call her up
Not
and
in a legal or ethical way. Carly is not my client. Let me preface that for the public. She does not get to receive any type of perk because she's my friend. It's just these little insights and advice that I tend to give that help.
well, when I call her up crying, I don't think she has any other choice. So
I think for me, I'm glad you even said that. Maybe you felt something from me because Shamina, every time you start speaking, I get like this lump in my throat. I was like, oh, she's about to drop a bomb that's gonna go in the journal later. I've been literally sitting here with a notebook taking all kinds of notes. But the last time you were speaking, just yeah, I got teary-eyed that time. The lump didn't, it broke. So I understand like the free therapy. So I appreciate that. Never want to like monopolize a space that's not meant for therapy because it's what you do with, it's more than that. But I think this podcast is therapeutic. I listened to the grief and loss session while I was taking a shower. I remember that. I'll never forget that day. And there was a lot shared that day. And I was like, this is some great stuff. This is some great content. And more people need to hear it and maybe even like share it in like a community space, like just break down like what they heard the two of you and your guests talk about. Sorry, I'm brainstorming.
No,
if it's gonna help us, please keep brainstorming. But no, it's funny because I'm sure since you've listened to some episodes, like I'm the emotional one. Let's be real. Like I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad, I cry whenever I'm feeling something. And like there are so many times that I just like will be telling Shamina how much she has helped me, and I just like break down in tears because it's just like I just don't think that there's any like words that I could use to express how I really feel. And like that feeling of whenever I try to, it just brings tears because I'm just like, I don't think you'll ever really know how I'm feeling because I don't know the word for it. And then it just leads to me crying.
I identify with that. I remember the first time I saw a feelings wheel by oh, I forgot the Dr. Wilcox, I think created it. I'm really bad at like attributing people unless I'm actually writing it. So apologies if I'm saying the name wrong. But anyway, like how it has like the core, like your core knee-jerk feelings is what I call them. And then it spans out into this greater wheel. The first time I saw that, I was like, so I wasn't hungry. I was feeling rejected because I couldn't leave my desk. Like being able to break down feelings versus experiences. Like someone can say, how are you feeling today? And you'll tell a whole story of things that happened to you versus how you're actually feeling because those things happened.
Yes.
I find that interesting now that I'm able to name them, Carly, because normally I would just cry. Like it would just, especially if I'm feeling like overwhelmed with the emotion, like overwhelmed with love, I'm absolutely going to cry. Like people thought I was crying at my husband's funeral because I was sad. That was a very small part of it. I was more overwhelmed by who showed up, who drove 4 hours plus that I didn't even know knew about the funeral. It was week before Christmas. It was bizarre. The people, not bizarre. It was beautiful. And I get to the point where I couldn't even write thank you cards because every time I think about it, I've apologized and acknowledged to people for not doing the formal thank you card. I just couldn't because I would just start crying. And I was like, I don't have time for this. I've got things to do. And then making phone calls was just blubbering. It was just me crying the whole time. So I definitely identify with speaking through tears.
Yes. And I think you nailed it with like the overwhelmed of love because even a couple months ago, a friend of mine got married. And I was just like, what? And I was just so, like I was in my feels because I was going through something, but just seeing like the love they had for each other and so how genuine it was, I just was bawling. Like they were at their first dance or they like were getting introduced. And I was like, I don't know why I'm crying this hard. Like I legit was like, I could have sobbed if I allowed myself, but I was trying to hold back a little bit because we were in public and everything. But tears were just streaming down my face because I was just like, it's like when it's like that genuineness and you can truly feel it and like this is real. It was just so like great to see. And it almost gave me like that hope of like, it's possible, like I guess for me, like everything that I had been through, but then seeing it, I was just like, this makes me so happy. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that a lot. Seeing someone else experience something that you desire can make you,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But in a good way, it's never like, well, at least for me, there was no form of like jealousy. It was like,
Right.
I'm genuinely happy that you are experiencing this because the person who it is, like 100% she deserves that. You know what I'm saying? And so it just like made me happy that she was getting that. But you're right. I desire that too.
Yeah, and two things can be true at the same time. We can be happy for others and also sad that we're not experiencing that level of joy or happiness or liberation, whatever it feels like or looks like. I think there's in this transition, just to go back to the beginning, I think there's spaces of that for me as well. Of I'm seeing, um, I really apologize about my dog. If you can hear
Oh,
him, he's doing the most. Um, and there's times I see myself like in the future doing whatever, living life, hopefully traveling more, experiencing different things, but then also seeing like friends start businesses and publish books and happy for them. Um, but feeling like, dang, I've had this book idea or I've had this XYZ thing for 10 years and I haven't done anything with it. What am I doing? But both things can exist. It's just a matter of what's going to motivate me. And the timing may not be right for me. I
mm-hmm.
mean, just maybe, or for any of us, like when things happen is I genuinely believe it's when they're supposed to happen. At least
I
that's what I
believe
hope.
that.
I've been believing that for a long time. So I hope that thing is true.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. I think lately more that like when it's our time, it'll happen. If that,
Yeah.
like it'll happen. It's just when it does, we don't know.
Yeah. And I think we go through these things in order to be able to like be ready for these experiences. Kamaria, you had mentioned earlier, of like if I was 20 years old going through all of these things, like I wouldn't be here right now. And so it's taken these different um, transitional phases or just experiences throughout your life to get you to this place to be, kind of equipped to cope with what's happening and whatnot. Because I do this a lot with like my clients. I actually just had a trauma session, and trauma therapy is very different than like traditional type of therapy. And so I tread very carefully and I established kind of this like baseline of like, let's ground, let's be able to kind of manage the symptoms now before we go any deeper into the trauma. Because if we go deeper, you won't know how to cope with those emotions. And then like, okay, great. We open Pandora's box. We don't know how to close it. And my client had said something to the effect of, I've been wondering this whole time why, and I've been working with them for almost a year, why we haven't been getting deeper all along. And I didn't realize it until just now that we've been laying down this foundation, and I wasn't ready to be able to go there. And I wouldn't be at this place now if you took me there kind of as a therapist of like, all right, this is what you're coming in for. Let's do X, Y, or Z, and let's get like down into the iceberg, like under the water. And she kind of had expressed her gratitude of the way that I structured our sessions and how it's taken to put out these little different things that we're all connected. And I don't think she could see it, but it was pretty clear to me. And that now in this place where she's at, we can go deeper because she's been able to address A, B, C, and now we can get to X, Y, and Z. And I think that's very prevalent for the things that we experience in life, is that they come to us when we're ready, to be able to kind of handle them. We don't think we can at the time. And we're like, oh my God, like, why is this happening now? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. But I'm a firm believer in every day this kind of gets reinforced that we are equipped. We just may not know it at the time. And that, you know, if we did experience these things 10, 15 years ago, we would have had a very different outcome because we were very different people then.
You're on mute.
I know. The dog actually calmed down. But no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I've already said it, like there are even like relationships, like friendships and things, like if they had formed when I was at a different place in my life, that friendship or relationship could have been very, very toxic. Or, you know, sometimes, you know, just acknowledging that there are people that are placed in your life at a certain time to help you recognize something, whether it's good or bad. That's just my reflection. Like there's been some people that have come into my life and it didn't have a positive outcome, but by surviving what happened between us, helped me know how to show up in the next friendship and formation of a relationship that I was going into. Or if that hadn't happened, then I probably would experience it in a different way, or maybe a more harmful way. But it has also helped me like forgive people, like look back and be like, thank you for that lesson you taught me, even though I really want nothing else to do with you, but thank you. Yeah, like I don't know if I would ever answer if you called, but thank you for playing the role you played in my life. And I had a situation recently where I was reminded that all of us are a villain in someone's story. And I think maybe some of us may struggle with believing that until we recognize whose story we're the villain in. But I was in a meeting and it was super awkward, and someone passive aggressively talked about something that happened 6 years ago with me. Didn't name me, but I knew they were talking about me. And I was just like, oh, wow, I'm still the bad guy in your story. Okay, cool. I thought we moved on, but clearly we haven't. So then like trying to identify like, how do I respond to this, or do I? Is it my responsibility to pedal backwards and repair something I didn't realize was broken? I acknowledged it briefly, and I'm moving on. But I found it interesting. Like that definitely went in the journal that night of I am still the villain in someone else's story. And what does that mean for me? And do I need to be concerned about other people's stories? No, no, not unless they bring it to me and they want to repair it, or want me to take accountability or acknowledge something that maybe I'm not aware of. So I'm always willing. I hope my friends know that. I hope my friends and family know that, that I'm always willing, because I've had situations where people don't say things that are super close to me until like they're okay. But by the time they bring it up, I'm so past it. Like, that was high school. Why are you still mad about that? And having the challenge of validating and affirming that, okay, I did do this thing, even though I'm not that person anymore. I did do this thing, and it did cause this other thing to happen. That's another part of like this transition of not hardening myself, like not developing this I don't care attitude, because I've been tempted to several times of just shutting down and be like, I don't care. If that happened to you, I don't care. Because my pain has been so deep. But then thank goodness for villages and people around me that are just like, you know, there's no monopoly on pain. Like we're all gonna experience loss. But let the people who are trying to be there for you be there for you. Don't push us away. So this transition thing has been a ebb and flow of giving trust and being still and like letting people help me. It's been a challenge that I don't therapy, because I don't know how I'm going to break through it. I really don't, because it's something I struggle with. But I acknowledge that it's maybe something I needed to. It's been there all the time. I just didn't recognize it, and this thing that's happened in my life is now revealed. Like, you actually have a huge problem with trusting people, Kamaria. You might want to work on that, because that'll, once you get free of that, then it'll take you to the next phase of being more authentic with yourself. it's just scary to acknowledge the things that you thought you were good with.
Mm-hmm.
I love your I love those.
But it's true. I just think like transitioning is different for everyone, but I think it's just important to kind of embrace what that is for you and see where it takes you.
Yeah, I mean, like the one of the transitions of like around parenting, like I'm always going to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's never going to end. I'm just now I'm the mom of a young adult, and I don't know what that looks like. I've only known motherhood of a infant to a a child, and that's has its own challenges. But there's like this consistency of like being the decision maker and being the person that they come to when they need something. And I mean, it's this transition with parenting has been happening for maybe the past 3 or 4 years, as far as I'm concerned, mentally for me, like preparing myself for the day where she's like, all right, Ma, I got it. I don't need you to make this phone call for me. I don't need you to fill out this application for me. Um, that letting go of the direct hands-on nurturing that I've done, like literally grabbing you in my arms and holding you. And I know that's always going to have its place, but having to learn how to let go of like, I don't have to, I'm not actually going to be the first person she comes to. Um, whereas I have been in the past, and recognizing that and just her own transition that she's gone through, and giving ourselves grace for that. Like there are things she's not experiencing from them from the perspective of being my child. She's experiencing them from the perspective of being her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm experiencing them from watching her go through them, and they're happening to me because they're actually things, if it weren't for her, I literally would not be um, dealing with it. I would just like, that's an issue that I can't handle right now, and I wouldn't be dealing with it. But also wanting to be in tune, and when she's ready to come to me, be able to say, okay, I'm here because I've been watching you go through this. But that's just like one of the transitions. I think it's the only, not only one, but it's one of the main ones I feel like I've been preparing myself for, or had the chance to prepare myself for, where like, losing my husband, I had no preparation for that. It's a thought, like you always have the thought of like, which one of us, or how is this going to happen? Um, Nothing I could prepare for. The transition of like who I am as an HIV advocate, now having this quote unquote career and this visibility, and transitioning from that to, I don't know what else is next. Like I don't know what else this advocacy world is going to bring me, because you surely could not have told me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting where I am now, as like a program director of a nonprofit organization that helps people live with HIV is mind blowing to me. And I don't know what comes after that. I know there's opportunities and possibilities because people have emailed and they have called and they have asked, for me to be in different spaces, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure all that out, because the HIV advocacy, I feel, is so much more different than a traditional career that I guess I would have gone through like with college. Whereas I didn't choose this as a career. This is an experience that happened to me, and I chose to make advocacy the only thing I did. Um, but I'm still a person living with HIV, so I can never actually turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas if I was the magazine publisher I wanted to be when I was 18, I can turn that off, and maybe nobody in that world would know about me living with HIV. So I think the transition for me is foggy a little bit, because I don't know where the line is of like who I am outside of advocacy. Like I don't want to, let's say there's a cure for HIV/AIDS tomorrow, and folks who are living with HIV don't have to worry about treatment or anything anymore. I've asked myself this question for a few years. Is like, if HIV is eliminated tomorrow, is no longer a problem, who are you? Like, who are you after that? And I still have I have not come up with an answer quite full that I feel satisfied with. Like, I know there's pieces of me, but I don't know who I am outside of that. And I don't like that. I don't like something having that much power in my life that I don't have an identity outside of it. So I've been trying to like name and find and explore and all that good stuff. And it's just, I guess I'm just constantly creating my own transitions outside of the things that, I have no control over. So I feel like I'm rambling, but
No, you're good.
I was gonna say, I feel like we could talk about this forever, and I think that we definitely should plan another time to have you as a guest because you've said so many things that I want to tap on, but I'll hold back a little bit. But I just think you said so many great points of I think it's really important. The last thing I'll say before we like wrap up and say thank you and everything is I think it's awesome that you've acknowledged who am I outside of being this person, and you're working on figuring that out. And um, we got to get back together to see what you find, because I think that's a question that I'm working on. So we'll definitely be having a follow up to see where that leads.
Yes.
yeah.
To kind of piggyback off of that, obviously Carly and you kind of have a work relationship, and this is the first time that I've met you. And so as you were kind of talking of, like who am I outside of the advocacy stuff, the first word that came to mind, and this will kind of be like my thing to leave you with and just to kind of think and reflect on is, you were like, who am I? And I was like, you are resilient. I've only heard of a couple of things that you've experienced in your life, and there's a lot of like resiliency in that's the underlying theme that I'm hearing is like this resilience. I'm being insightful, I'm being aware, I'm working on these things, I'm acknowledging myself, I'm doing all of the things, and that helps to create this sense of resilience. And so it seems like that is your gift, and learning how to be vulnerable, and you get to choose what you do with that. And it's very confusing, but it's also very empowering because you're in a position to choose. So do with that what you will.
I will chew on that. I think that's a great like segue into whenever I come back to share space with you all, because I have like how you feel about the word acceptance is how I feel about the word resilience. Because I have a complicated relationship with, am I being resilient because I have to be because things just keep happening? Am I resilient because I'm choosing to overcome a situation? Am I resilient because oppression is a thing and I was born into resiliency? Like, where do I land with that? So I'm still working on figuring that out. So, but I do, in the sense of the word of like making a choice around the things that we experience, not having a negative impact on us. Yes, I will choose resiliency every time if I can. If I can find it in the bottom of the toolbox, if that's where it got dropped into. Oh, there it is. There's my resiliency. Let me put that on and show up the best way I can. And I think it can be a power, just like vulnerability. So, or a pathway to vulnerability. Yeah. Yeah. I
Well,
really, oh,
oh, no, go ahead. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I truly enjoyed our conversation, and I think we all could have talked all night long.
I was literally just going to say thank you. Like, thank you for having me in this space with you both. Shamina, it's been awesome meeting you. Carly, it's always like awesome to have a conversation with you. And interesting, even though we met through work, our conversations have never been around just work. It's either about helping someone or we just, I don't know, we resonate with one another. So it's never felt like work for me. And I'm really glad that you thought of me for this space.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, you are always welcome. So I definitely want to plan a second, but no, like, you're always welcome. So if you want to be like, Carly, let's get together and do this, let me know when and where, and we are doing it.
Awesome.
Definitely. And it's been an absolute pleasure being able to kind of hear your story, Kamaria, and being able to be part of it and kind of listening to what you showed up with today. And so thank you for that. And thank you for choosing to be vulnerable with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there'll be lots of journal writing tonight.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I will see you all around these internet streets.
Yes.
Yes.
Bye.
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 I'm feeling pretty damn full. How about you?
I would say yes, absolutely. So I really enjoyed talking about the transitional phase with her because just the other night I was lying in bed and October will be a year from the initial breakup, and I thought back on everything that's happened in this past year and I was like, wow, this has been a year. And I just was thinking of all, like, I would say that this is a transitional phase for me, but all of the change and growth, I like was my eyes were closed. I was thinking about it and I just smiled because I was just like, I wouldn't have chosen it any other way, but it was just like, like sometimes when you think back when it's like starting to be New Year's and you're like, nothing different happened. But like for me, it was like this October is like this new year for me. And thinking back on it was just like, oh my God, I've been through so much and it's like only been a year. Oh my God. But anyways, so yeah.
So, are you feeling full yet?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
I'd be very surprised if nobody was after that conversation. But we want to hear from you. How do you view transitional periods in your life? How do you cope with them? How do you adapt? Let us know. Comment on below in our comments, or check us out on Facebook at Emotionful Podcast, or check us out on Instagram at Emotionful Pod. I'm over this dog barking. So
I know. Can you I'm just kidding. We
he's
love dogs.
he's gotta go. No,
Yeah.
he's gotta go outside. Is what he's got to do. So,
Kick
but
it to the curb.
check out our socials. Comment below. We want to hear from you guys. Thank you all for your continued support, and stay tuned.
Yes. Stay tuned.
Bye.
Bye.